If you're going to be eating fish, you can always come over here and eat fish. Cooked fish. Cooked fish. Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei. Okay, so we already heard a mazel tov to Marina, her child's 1-year birthday. We heard that. Effie?
Yes, today.
A dog.
Today.
A dog.
A dog.
A dog, not a child. A dog.
Like a child.
I was misled. Okay, even better. Okay. Effie?
Yes, today is Shulamit's 88th birthday.
Wow.
Mazel tov. Happy birthday, Shuli.
When you speak with her, please convey in your own way our love and best wishes.
Thank you.
Do it in Hebrew, for God's sake. Yom Huledet Sameach, would you please do it right? No, don't sing it, Effie. Just,
you're right. You're right about that.
just say it. Okay, Lorraine. Hello, Lorraine just signed on. Hi, Lorraine.
Hi.
Okay.
Are we doing mazel tovs now, Rabbi?
We are doing life cycle check-ins, including mazel
Well,
tov.
I'd like to announce that my son Billy, my fabulous, wonderful bachelor son, just got engaged.
Mazel tov. That's terrific. How old is he?
He's 48 years old. He's never been married. He's a bachelor. He's been all over the world. He's a fabulous chef. He's a successful guy, and he's married. He's found this lovely gal. Who's also never been married, no kids, and they're starting all over. Two young.
So as we say in Hebrew, it's about time.
Yeah. But he waited for the right one, and there she is, right in front of him.
Okay, fabulous.
Thank you.
Any other life cycle check-ins, the good stuff, sometimes the difficult stuff? I would like to indicate that my first grandchild graduated college on Thursday.
Wow.
So James Dweck graduated Johns Hopkins, and the president of Johns Hopkins, in his major address, used as the framework for his address Leonard Cohen, light comes in through broken places. He was all about Leonard Cohen. So I felt warmly welcome.
That's great.
I'm sure he did that just for me. We're thrilled. We're excited. And in case anyone's interested, before he goes to medical school, he is going to be a fireman for a year. Don't ask.
Oh, that's amazing.
Don't ask. I'm not responsible. Okay. Any other life cycle events, good things, checking in, concerns? Super. Okay. Calendar. Saturday evening, May 29th, which I think is tonight, is the Havdalah farewell to Rabbi Lutz. It's going to be Zoomed. I don't have the connection. I assume that it's out there. We need it. But any event, that's going to be happening.
It's in the newsletter with all of the links, including the yesterday's. So it's in there.
Okay, great. Thank you.
It's 5:30 tonight. Am I right?
7
tonight? Oh,
6:30, I thought.
6:30.
yeah, 6.
There's 7.
Okay.
Sounds right.
I suggest that you better look at the bulletin. The bulletin will have the link and the time. So that'll be good.
Which I just did. It says 7.
It's 7.
Okay. May 29th tonight, Havdalah farewell to Rabbi Lutz. Really important and well-deserved.
Sorry, it says 30.
Okay, I was looking at an old one. I apologize.
Yeah, it says
What's the final time now tonight?
6:30.
6:30.
6:30. That's what I had. Yeah.
And then 1 week from tonight, June 4th, is the first combined services of Wilshire and University Synagogue. So these are just 2 Friday evenings in a row that I'll see everybody there, and looking forward to that. They're big, they're good. I'm putting in an unpaid announcement for a free activity on June 9th, 5 p.m. I mentioned before there is an organization abbreviated JUDJ, Jews United for Democracy and Justice, on Wednesday afternoon, June 9th, 5 p.m. Deborah Lipstadt is the guest, and she is world famous on contemporary anti-Semitism. If you have listened to nothing else, even though I recommended, I really recommend you come to this one. So it's Deborah Lipstadt, June 9th, 5 p.m., anti-Semitism. Look for, just Google JUDJ, and it's free. I just sign up.
You have to you do have to register.
Yeah.
It takes a second, and then they'll send you a link, and they do amazing programs every week.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
Deborah Lipstadt is amazing. If you've never taken a class from her or read her books, one class won't do it. You'll want to be hooked on it forever.
Yes. Yes. And as I sometimes take pain to point out, she worked for me when she was a teenager, and I find that very threatening. The whole image of whatever.
Look
Okay.
what you created.
No, look what's happened to me. Okay, so this is Memorial Day weekend, and we certainly express gratitude and thoughts of love to those who died in defense of our country. Understand the difference between Armed Forces Day, which commemorates, celebrates all of the military forces of the United States. Memorial Day, those who died in action on behalf of defending the United States. So it's a very specific thing. I will not mention that, having lived in Atlanta, I'm not going to mention that there is also Confederate Memorial Day, which is observed often in lieu of America. But that's a separate issue for a separate day. Okay, anything else? We're going to get started. Okay, I see David Scott Caden. David, can you just let me see your face for a second, or maybe not if you choose not to? But I would love to see who you are. And it's great to be with everybody. And Hannah Gohl, again, thank you for, oh, okay, there's David. Got it. Thank you. For Hannah, for taking over moderating, in the sense of, you are now the one we will blame if the electronics break down. So that's great. That's great. We're going to do something which is purely an expression of my own interest. We're going to turn to the Plout 960, the Women of Reformed Judaism 853, Numbers chapter 10, verse 33. 10:33. And the reason I selected this, and there's no real apology, when I come across passages in the Torah which are in the standard service, in other words, we bump into this every time we daven, I like to point out the location in the Torah from which it came. Now, this, starting actually with verse 35, this is in the Orthodox Torah service every Shabbos, every week. This is sung, and it sounds like Vayehi bin Aharon Vayomer Moshe Kuma Adonai Ve'yafutzu oivecha ve'yanusu mitzanecha mipanecha. Goes right into the King Zion, and that's the introduction to the Torah service. But enough, Evie, enough. It's worse that I sang. You don't have to do it. Actually, I didn't sing. I vocalized. And I would like to read the setup, because there are some really we are going to encounter today some really interesting side notes to how the Torah got to be where it is from the point of view of Orthodox commentators. This is like wildly interesting, at least to me. So on verse 33, we are in Numbers chapter 10. Okay, first question. How long after the Exodus started, how far have we reached to get to Numbers chapter? So we've gone from, Exodus 20 is the 10 commandments already. So we've gone from Exodus, Leviticus, now we're in Numbers chapter 10. How far along in the journey through the wilderness have we gone? Fern?
3 days.
Yeah, give or take. Yes. So when I first realized that, when someone pointed it out, I felt so stupid. It says it's clear, but it didn't record from Exodus through Leviticus through Numbers chapter 10. The Israelites have made 3 days. Now, at that rate, it's Jim, it's Numbers chapter 10, and it's verse 33 and following. And it's kind of strange. So from Numbers chapter 10 to the end of Deuteronomy is about 39 and a half years, whatever. So it's not exactly proportional, but when you really get down to it, there are maybe only 2 years of the wandering that are covered in the Torah text. Really interesting to think about. It's not a record of 40 years of wandering. It's a record of 2 years plus, and they stayed here and they stayed there, this place and that place. Okay, so we go. They marched from the mountain of Adonai a distance of 3 days. Mountain of Adonai, Mount Sinai. They went from Mount Sinai. Now they're 3 days after Mount Sinai. Can you imagine? Okay, now, the Ark of the Covenant of Adonai traveled in front of them on that 3 days journey to seek out a resting place for them. And Adonai's cloud kept above them by day as they moved from camp. This is the, if you will, the electronic code for the GPS, which the Israelites followed through the desert. The first thing that happens is that the Ark of the Covenant, okay, the Ark of the Covenant, Aron Brit Adonai, seems to move ahead of the people like a 3-day journey, and the people are behind. In other words, the Ark is the cutting edge of the movement of the people. Very interesting, very interesting. Later on, when the Israelites go into battle, the same thing happens. The Ark is the leading edge of the camp, even in battle. Very interesting. So it's like they put their big weapons right in front God's Ark. There was a hand up. I'm sorry. Steve? Yeah.
I don't know how many were on animals and how many on foot, but we don't know when it was decided it would take 40 years, because I get the impression that with trade between Israel and Egypt, people were going back and forth a lot, that you probably could do that journey in a week.
Yeah. And also, at this stage, Steve, everyone thinks, at least according to the narrative, that they're going straight to the promised land. There's no 40 years. Next week, we start talking about the spies, and all of a sudden, this whole generation has to be wiped out. So when we're reading this, we're reading Okay, guys, let's get the ark out there. We're going to be marching. Off we go from Mount Sinai. And yeah, maybe a week, whatever, we will be in the promised land, according to the narrative. Okay? So yes, you are correct about that. The ark traveled in front of them. Now, what problem does verse 34 solve? I mean, we got to really do this stuff. We got to dig. What problem does it solve? In the GPS structure, the pillar of cloud is supposed to lead the people in the day and the pillar of fire by night. But if the ark moved forward, what's our problem? Where's the pillar of cloud? It's supposed to be leading the camp. And here it says God's cloud was sitting on top of them. So that as the ark moved forward and they moved in relationship to the ark, above it was this sign, a cloud pillar, which indicated, yeah, they're headed in the right way and God approves of the direction. Very interesting stuff here. Now,
Rabbi,
question. I'm sorry.
I did.
Oh, first, yes.
I'm just wondering, it seems like if I were thinking about what would lead someone in the day versus the night, I might think of the sun and fire in the day and fire at night, light at night. It's an odd, or it seems noteworthy that what we're guided by is a cloud, not the sun.
Yeah, thank you for, no, that's nothing I had ever thought about, and thank you for that.
And it's particularly interesting, I mean, I suppose because in Egypt, they worship the sun.
Yeah, that was one of the things they worship. But yeah,
Not moving. The sun doesn't move in a direction that would lead them.
yeah, it's an interesting gestalt question. Like, you know, how does this piece work? And it is interesting. And they had to have a clear notion as to which way they were headed. And remember, none of these people had been there apparently before. Now, I am going to ask you, non-Hebrew readers, do you see anything unusual in verse 34 in the Hebrew? Don't tell me you can't read Hebrew. Look at the Hebrew. Do you see anything noteworthy? Effie. You're muted, which is great, but can you
Okay. Okay. In my Hebrew, it has a shin yud at the end.
At the end of verse 34,
Yeah.
shin yud. I wish I could see. I know you're being helpful. Oh,
Mine does
okay. Now, the shin yud is shishi. That means the aliyah. It's the sixth aliyah. What is that standard? But right after it, Effie, is what we're looking for. What's there?
An upside down nun.
Yeah,
Looks like a phone.
okay. It looks like a nun. It may look like a phone to some. Okay. Now, there is an upside down nun in the text. You see it. I mean, you can all recognize it, whether you can read Hebrew or not. It's something weird sitting there. Now, I'm going to move rapidly ahead to verse 36. Look at verse 36. Do you see anything unusual in the Hebrew? Mara is happy. Yes. Okay, what do you see there, Mara, if you could unmute?
Oh, also a backwards nun.
Right. So here we have in the Torah text, not just a printer's problem. In the Torah text, we have two upside down nuns. How often does that happen? It doesn't. It's here. It's here. So the rabbis are really concerned. And I'm now going to give you my first fascinating statement from Rashi. Okay, are you ready for this? The first fascinating statement from Rashi, I quote Rashi, God put those nuns here to show that the passage is out of order. Talk to me about what Rashi just said, Natalie. Oh, okay. Sorry. Rashi just said those two nuns backwards are there to bracket a passage in the Torah which is out of place. Talk to me, Lisa Beth.
I'm sorry, I'm actually not looking at the text, but I mean, wouldn't the rabbis argue that there is nothing that is mistaken or out of place in the Torah, that it was written by the hand of God and therefore everything is exactly as it should be?
One would think that, Lisa Beth. Yeah. So here you have a perfect text. The rabbis will battle over every word and every letter being an expression of the divine will. Rashi sees these weird, it is weird, nuns bracketing two verses, and Rashi is comfortable saying, well, that passage is out of place. Effie.
Well, God put it where he wanted to, and he wanted to put it out of place. And Rashi is just pointing out the fact that God wanted to do this.
Okay. Yes.
For some reason, he wanted to put it out of place.
Okay. So
Doesn't help us.
Jim?
I said that doesn't help us when we ask why.
Yeah, it doesn't help us at all. It just leaves a lot of questions. Some of the other commentators will say it's a topic divider, that this topic doesn't flow from what came before and what follows. You understand that these are all just grasping for straws, looking for a reason, and this is the reason. Rashi said God put those nuns here to show that the passage is out of order. Rashi also said something else, which was really helpful. That passage is set off to separate punishment for Israelite activity before and punishment for Israelite activity after. There's a small problem. No one can find the punishment before. If you read the text, read a few verses, read 5 verses before, it's not there. Afterwards, yeah, we have a problem. So the rabbis offer an explanation which totally doesn't hold water. This is a very interesting passage. For those of us, unlike Effie, who view the possibility that this is fully a man-made, human-made document, and this is an editorial thing. It's something that got there. And of course, in the Orthodox world, there has to be a real explanation. Hold on to it just because it's interesting. Now, we're going to continue. There's more. And the cloud moved ahead. When the ark was to set out, Moses would say, Vayehi bin Soah Ha'aron, when it's time for the ark to travel, Moses would say, Kuma Adonai, v'yafutzu oivecha, v'yanusu masanecha mipanecha. This is a real statement about militaristic encounter. The ark is moving forward, the cutting edge, the sharp edge of the Israelite army. It's good. Rashi would also indicate It is a plea by the Israelites, Kuma Adonai, God, could you just hold up a bit? It's 3 days ahead of us and we can't see you, so we're a little nervous. So the rabbis struggle with this, and I love it. I love it. Sforno, another commentator, says something really painful here. Sforno, had it not been for the episode of the spies that follows next week, this would have been a quick march to the promised land. In other words, this is the moment, the last moment in which the people who left Egypt are thinking that they're going to be alive and go into the promised land. It's the last moment of that. And that makes it, hi Merle, that makes it, I'm just waving, that makes it interesting. Now, there's more. Arise, O God, or advance, O God, or if the Torah were speaking Yiddish, Haltzachain epes, hold it, stop. You're getting too far ahead. The next phrase, may your enemies be scattered, for Yafutsu oivecha. Tell me what that means to you. Who are God's oivim? Who are God's enemies? Who are God's enemies? Okay, Lisa Beth, and then Effie.
Well, I'm just thinking that since they just left Egypt, maybe the enemies are the Egyptian gods.
Fine. That's a good as anything else. Yes, Effie?
People who do not believe in God and worship him.
Okay, someone who believes in other gods or who does not believe in our God or does both. Merle.
Even though it's not till the next chapter, the people that are, I'm thinking that the people were already complaining before it gets written down in the next chapter.
So some of God's enemies are Israelites who think improperly. Okay?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, fine. Absolute. Good. Now, Rashi, I'm going to quote. Hold on to this one. Who are God's enemies? Rashi. These are those who hate Israel, because whoever hates Israel hates God. That's quite a statement. Okay? Again, this is why I got fascinated here by this material. Whoever hates the Jewish people hates God.
So
Now,
that Israel is not the state of Israel, it's the people of Israel.
Obviously. Come on. I mean, there's no state. Yes. I was thinking maybe it was the Chancellor of Rutgers who unfortunately condemned anti-Semitism and was then forced to retract because he didn't also condemn actions against the Palestinians. That just happened this week. And does that bother me? Yeah. Okay. But, okay. So, Fern, did you have your hand up? I'm sorry. No? Okay. So, those who hate the Jewish people are haters of God. Rashi. Fascinating. We're just gonna go on.
Rabbi, I do want to, it doesn't say they're haters of God. It says that God hates them.
Well, it's v'yafutzu oivecha, and your enemies, oivim shelcha. It's pretty clear. V'yafutzu, so it starts off, Kuma Adonai. Adonai is the subject. Come on, rise up, God. V'yafutzu, and let them be scattered. Oivecha, your enemies. It's pretty much.
But doesn't that mean that God has enemies, not that the animus comes from God? No.
No, I don't think so. I think in this case, it's talking about animus coming from people.
Okay,
But the part that grabbed me for was the very clear statement. You hate the Jews, you are an enemy of God. I mean, that's the equation here. That's what it says. Okay, any other comment? Going well. Any other comment? Okay, I can't see the hand. Is it Harvey or Mara? Okay,
Mara, I have a question, and it may be that I just don't understand this because I don't know the Hebrew. But in verse 34, in my translation, it says, "And the cloud of the Lord was over them."
yes,
Is that literally a cloud in Hebrew?
as clearly as possible, fair question. Anan. Anan is a cloud. There's no other way to translate it to my knowledge.
So
Anan is a cloud.
if it is, and we're being told the cloud of the Lord was over them by day, rather than interpreting that in a positive way, can we look at that negatively? That is, God was troubled with over the Israelites, and there was a cloud that God kept over them.
That's such good parshanut. That's good commentary making. It is referring here to the Amud Anan, the pillar of cloud. The cloud was a symbol of God's leadership of the people through the desert. So I think we'd have to hold here that the Anan is a positive affirmation that they're going in the right direction.
Only because the rabbis have interpreted that in that way.
Okay, Tamara, please.
No, Anan, cloud in the Bible doesn't have the negative connotations that have emerged in later tradition. So it's a perfectly wonderful natural phenomenon, not a sign of disfavor. The way we use it, let not cloud our thinking or a day. We use it that way. It's not. That's not what it ever means in the Bible. In fact, because the sun is so strong, clouds are really helpful because you need some clouds so you don't get the sunstroke. So it's a whole different metaphor system.
Thank you.
Thank you. Merle?
I was just thinking of what Tamara just said, that about I live in the desert and we pray for clouds. I mean, we don't love the monsoons because they're dangerous, but the clouds, it's hot out there. I mean, I can't go for my usual walks anymore now that the pavement's hot. They're in the desert, so the dirt's even hotter. And so I was thinking that the cloud was it was a protection while they were crossing the desert. And the fire, here in the desert, there's no lights. I mean, lighting is pretty bad at night. So if they're crossing the desert at night, they need the fire to light up the sky so they can see where they're going.
You mean you can't buy a Coleman lamp in the Sinai Desert?
Apparently not.
Wow.
During the pandemic, it was impossible to find here because everybody was out on their driveways and buying them up so that they could see on their driveways.
I didn't mean to be real. Okay.
Well, you were.
Okay. Now, this is so much fun. I'm sorry for being happy about it, but it is so much fun. So the ark went forward. God said, Kuma, come on, God, let your enemies be scattered, and those who hate you, may they flee from before you. It's really redundant. It's redundant and even repetitive. Vayafutsu, vayanusu. Let them be scattered. Let them flee before you. Fine. Okay. Now, verse 36, as everyone here knows, because we are all traditional Torah scholars, as everybody knows, verse 36 is recited not when you take the Torah out of the ark, but when you return the Torah to the ark. Okay? So it's fascinating how these verses are used. Uvenucha yomar. Uvenucha is the same word. You'll know the word menucha, rest, Shabbat menucha, Sabbath rest. Ve'anuchu, so when the ark rests, let them say, Shuv Adonai v'vavot alfei Yisrael. Return, Adonai, you who are Israel's myriads of thousands. What does that mean? Fern?
No,
Oh, I don't have hair like that, Fern, and I'm sorry. I get jealous. Used to, but that's a different story. Give rest, O God, to the myriads of thousands of Israel. That doesn't seem to be saying anything at all. Just, okay, God, you are the full representative of the myriads of Israel. Effie would tell us there's no such thing as a stam text, as a text that just says something and doesn't have a meaning. Everything has a meaning, Steve Miller.
Well, my text actually says, return to the myriad thousands. And I think perhaps it means while they're marching and the clouds in front of them, that God is leading them. And then at night, they should feel safe because God is back hovering over the people to keep them safe.
Okay. I mean, that's logical and possible. And now I'm going to quote a bit of Talmud. Just throw a small piece of Talmud at you. Here it comes. This phrase, whatever, myriads of thousands, whatever. I want you to hear this. This teaches us that the Shekinah does not rest upon Israel if they are less in number than 22,000. Would you please look at our text? Steve, you seem to be smiling. Why?
That seems to be an interpretation made out of whole cloth to me.
Oh, okay. Maybe. So yesterday, I was studying Quran again. You know, every other week I'm into an hour's worth of Quran with Rabbi Reuben Firestone, who is fabulous teacher. In any event, yesterday we studied the Shekinah in both rabbinic literature and the Hadith Quranic literature. And the Shekinah lives in both literatures. And it's fascinating. The Shekinah, we know, is the feminine aspect of God, the indwelling presence of God. You've heard of Shekinah, and I will say a simple sentence. The Shekinah was conceptualized because of the problem of monotheism. I can say this without moving my arm. How do you get from an infinite, abstract God to Steve Miller? How can God in utter perfection touch Steve Miller? Can't be done. So, Steve, what do we need?
Well, I hate to think we need an intermediary because I think that one of the things that differentiates us from Christianity and otherwise is that I feel I have a direct connection to God and I don't need some spirit or person or child of God to intervene for me.
Fine. Would you just sign out, Steve, so you don't have to hear what follows? There is a technical problem, philosophic technical problem between the absolute infinite God and humankind materiality this world. If God is absolutely other, how can God touch the mundane world?
In some ethereal way through.
Yes, and we
mind,
call that ethereal way the Shekinah, and the Christians call it the Christ. Does that upset you?
Yes.
Good. Okay, I've succeeded. The
I
problem.
see them as the same.
Pardon?
Because we don't actually pray to the Shekinah as separate from God, the way people pray to saints, pray to Mary, pray to Jesus.
Okay.
I think it's different because
I'm going to ask.
it's part of God and it's not an intermediary.
I'm gonna ask an objective outsider. Tamara, do Jews ever pray to Shekinah? Yes,
Yeah.
they do.
Especially in the modern time, very much, especially in feminist circle. An important part of it is the Shekinah is a female persona, and it is what we might call a feminine aspect of God, which is accessible. So while the traditional liturgy does not, to my knowledge, it does say Shechinato. Yeah, it does include the Shekinah, even in traditional things, but especially now, people do address the Shekinah.
But isn't an aspect of God different than a separate entity?
Yeah.
So
But
it's still different to me.
it's an aspect, but Christians would say the same thing about Jesus and about the Holy Spirit. These are perceptible manifestations. So our Holy Trinity is God, the Ruach, and the Shekinah.
Did you just hear that? I'm sorry, Tamara. Could you repeat?
I heard it.
Could you
Doesn't
just
mean I like it.
Okay. It's Steve, it's a problem in theology. It is a serious problem. You project an absolute infinite God, and you've got to figure out how that God can touch us. And I will refer you to some of my favorite readings. Why don't you pick up the protocols of the Council of Nicaea 325, in which the Catholic Church officially debated the nature of the Christ. And at that point, they were arguing the same things. Is it three in one? Are there three separate? All kinds of stuff. And what the Council of Nicaea did, which we Jews never really successfully learned how to do, they drove out of the church everyone who didn't get the agreement of the majority from the council. And sometimes they conveniently massacred them. So the battle over the nature of Jesus is only about 2,000 years old. Is Jesus, what does it mean to be Son of God? What does Trinity mean? 3 in 1, 1 in 3? It is a constant theological, I'm going to use a big word, conundrum. It is a conundrum. And I want to say to you that if you hold on to what we call traditional theism, you got this problem. If God is absolutely the other, if God is omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, how do we make contact with God?
No problem. I do it all the time.
Okay.
I just don't
I'm
find
a theist.
so I don't find this so problematic. I mean, first of all, religions constantly absorb, pieces of culture, but I mean, for humans, it shouldn't be so challenging because we, even in our regular mundane lives, are multiple things and still one human being. We're father, daughter, sister, wife, mom, dad, worker, et cetera, and we're still one human being, but we manifest ourselves in many different ways. And so I don't, it's a challenging concept.
Elizabeth, before I call on others, I want to point out that one of my real problems as a teacher, one of those problems has come up every time we get to this point in a discussion with the Jewish group and somebody says, how are we then really different? And we really are different. But most of the things, ordinary, what we call amcha, people, what people ordinarily think are the big dividing lines between Judaism and Christianity, in many cases, they are not. And what most people do not understand, what the real dividers are. Okay, there were other hands up, I'm sorry. Okay, Larry, please.
But that's the aspect of Christianity that I have difficulty with. I am way more comfortable with that aspect or manifestation of the divine being capable of communicating and having a relationship with people. I don't understand when you make that aspect of God a separate being. That's the part that I don't get, because if with a omnipresent, omniscient God, there doesn't seem to me to be a need for that separate thing that Christians found in Christ.
Right. The only correction I'd make there is that it need not be a separate being, but as Tamara pointed out, an aspect. The
Right.
feminine aspect of God does not require a separate being. It is that the Godhead contains a feminine aspect. Did I say that right? Okay. But Merle, this is why I wanted to go to this stuff today. It's really interesting. Merle.
I feel like, I don't know how to explain this the right way, but I think that whether we believe in God or the Shekinah, or however we interpret all of this, all depends on how we interpret what God does or doesn't do, where it involves us as a personality or us as an individual. Whether we think God did the right thing for us in the case of an illness, or whether we think God did the right thing in the case of something with our children or grandchildren or friends or whatever. I think all of anyone's interpretation of God depends on what they think God should be doing or not doing, or did or didn't do for them.
There's something, Merle, which is sometimes called the darkness of the soul. And at times we enter a darkness of the soul. And sometimes that leads to a strengthening of how we view God and the world. And sometimes it rips it apart. Sometimes when it rips it apart, it rearranges. And sometimes when it rips it apart, it terminates. Yeah. Brad, were you raising your hand or just like waving at me? Okay, I wave at you anyway. I mean, that's nice. Folks, I'm going to go to one more thing here, and there's so much more. We have time for a little bit more. I read, this teaches us that the Shekinah does not rest upon Israel if they are less in number than 22,000. This is a quote from the Talmud, Yevamot 64a. The reason I say that is that affirmative statement is contradicted in sources all over the place. And it's one of the interesting, beautifully interesting things about Jewish study. Here in the Talmud, it says, you don't get Shekinah if there aren't 22,000 Jews present. That's the tipping point. It says it right here, Rivavot Alfei Yisrael. In Mishnah Avot, at Pirkei Avot, the Mishnah Avot, it goes through a whole litany in which it says the Shekinah is with us with 10, the Shekinah is with us with 3, and the Shekinah is with us in 1. One person can encounter the manifestation of the feminine aspect of God. When we study the way we study, we come together and we study. What we're finding is enormous differences, disagreements, varied positions. And for me, the beauty is through our study, we each individually make our peace with a given perspective. Do we really believe that God can't communicate with us if we aren't in large numbers? Do we really believe that God has a way of encountering us as a single person and the variations in between? And the rabbis over the thousands of years, well, I'll give them 1,800, 1,000, have debated this, and we still debate it. And we are in that debate. No one's going to tell you what the answer is. But we are going to say there's a lot to learn, a lot to learn. I'm going to move on. I have all of 2 minutes left to do another major topic, but is there a question? Good. I mean, well, okay. In Numbers 11:4, a little bit of a jump. 11:4. In the women's commentary, I'm on 854, but 11:4. The riff-raff in their midst felt a gluttonous craving. And then the Israelites wept and said, if only we had meat. And you have another big explosion of Israelite unfaithfulness. I said Thursday evening in my posting, I love the word asafsuf, rabble. It's an onomatopoeia, and asafsuf, I like the way it sounds. I always have. There's another way to refer to the rabble. It's Erev Rav, a mixed multitude. Folks, what was the Erev Rav, the Asafsuf, the mixed multitude? Who were they? Steve.
They were all the people that accompanied the Hebrews out of Egypt that weren't necessarily part of that tribal group.
Steve, yes. When the Israelites left Egypt, there were, in my elegant phrase, hangers-on. There were those who joined the fleeing Israelites. They also were slaves or indentured or something, and they took the occasion to flee with the Israelites. Every time I say this, I have a picture of a prison movie. You know, when someone opens up some of the cells and then a whole bunch of other people join, right? It's like it's a prison break, and not everybody who gets out is part of your community. I'm going to end our conversation by quoting Ibn Ezra. Folks, the Israelites who fled Egypt were not pure Israelite stock. Mixed in with the Israelites fleeing Egypt were others, maybe from other slave populations captured in Africa and brought to Egypt. Who knows? Egyptians conquered all kinds of people. All kinds of people were put into slavery. From day one, and to me, the most important lesson of today, there never was a Jewish race. There never was a pure Israelite people, all descended from Jacob and his sons and so forth. Those people constituted the overwhelming majority, but along with them was the Asafsuf, the Erev Rav, the mixed multitude. When people say in any way that Jews are a race, they are wrong from day one of the Jewish people. To me, this is a hugely important aspect of defining who we are as Jews. Any comment, and then, and I promised you today would be different. Any comment, and then we're going to end. Anyone have something to throw in? Thank you very, very much. This was an important day. Very simple passage, very complicated. And thank you for working it through with me. Tonight, the Havdalah saying farewell to Rabbi Lutz. Next Friday evening, the combined first time Wilshire University Synagogue one service thing. And have a safe Memorial Day. Love you. See you. Thank you, Jill. Oh, okay. I got a compliment. It doesn't happen that often. Okay.
Shalom.
Thank you.
Shabbat shalom.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Shabbat shalom.
Bye.
Shalom,
Shabbat
everybody.
shalom.
Have a happy
Shalom.
weekend.
Thanks so much.
Bye.